Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to address you today on the 5th African Union Commission Symposium on Special Economic Zones and the 7th meeting of the African Economic Zone Organization. Special economic zones are increasingly gaining momentum in Africa, given the need for Africa to accelerate its economic growth, improve the development of competitive value chains nationally, regionally, and globally, and expand Africa's share and competitiveness in global manufacturing. And there is a good reason for a greater sense of urgency. Without any doubt, Africa's wealth must no longer depend on exports of raw materials, but of finished value-added products. The door to poverty is from export of raw materials. The highway to wealth is industrialization. With rising wages in China and other Asian countries, as they move from labor-intensive industries to more knowledge-intensive industries, they are outshoring their light manufacturing industries. The so-called flying geese model is on the rise as these countries outsource their manufacturing capacities to new industrial manufacturing platforms with lower labor costs, from where they can launch market entry into regional and global markets. Ethiopia has been very successful with its special economic zones, which have allowed it to attract significant investments in multiple industries, including leather, footwear, textile, garments, and pharmaceuticals. Ethiopia's well-established one-stop shops aggressively seek out investors, maintain and strengthen investor-state relations, and use them in turn to attract other investors. My country, Nigeria, has also established the Guangdong-Ogun Free Trade Zone, the Lekki Free Trade Zone, and the Calabar Free Trade Zone. The newly constructed $19 billion Dangote Petrochemical and Fertilizer Complex, indeed the world's largest ammonia plant, in the free trade zone with a new deep sea port, is exactly the kind of massive industrial and infrastructural manufacturing capacity that is needed to make Nigeria a regional and global player in gasoline, diesel, and aviation fuel, and of course, fertilizer value chains. The African Continental Free Trade Area is the continent's best pathway to prosperity. To unlock its potential, however, we must not just simply trade. We must turn the zone into an industrial manufacturing zone with inshoring of manufacturing in Africa. Now, free trade zones that launch prosperity around the world have done so not by trading low-value commodities, but by industrial manufacturing. With the African Continental Free Trade Area zone, the continent needs more industrial manufacturing platforms, and that will be achieved only through greater investments in special economic zones. Your Excellencies, the sector with the greatest potential for industrialization in Africa is agriculture. Africa has 65% of the uncultivated arable land left to feed the world. Therefore, how Africa develops its agriculture will determine the future of food in the world. Across Africa, we must turn cocoa beans into chocolates, cotton into textile and garments, and coffee beans into brewed coffee. That is why the African Development Bank is investing $25 billion in agriculture across the continent to transform the agricultural sector. The African Development Bank is investing over $1 billion in the development of special agro-industrial processing zones that we call SAPZs in 18 countries to help to unlock Africa's potential in food and agriculture. The African Development Bank and our partners, which includes the Islamic Development Bank and the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, we recently launched a joint $538 million investment for the development of special agro-industrial processing zones in Nigeria. We're excited by it. This is part of our broader efforts to unlock Africa's food and agriculture market that is estimated to reach $1 trillion by 2030. Your Excellencies, Africa has an abundance of natural resources, oil, gas, minerals, and metals, as well as an extensive blue economy that must be rapidly industrialized. Think of the following as well. The future of electric cars in the world depends on Africa, given its extensive resource deposits in rare minerals, especially lithium ion, cobalt, nickel, and copper. The size of the electric vehicle market in the world is estimated to reach $7 trillion by 2030 and $46 trillion by 2050. Now, building precursor facilities for lithium-ion batteries in Africa will be 3 times cheaper than in other parts of the world. And that's why the African Development Bank and its partners, which includes the African Finance Corporation, the African Export-Import Bank, the Development Bank of South Africa, the Trade and Development Bank, the European Investment Bank, and the Islamic Development Bank are working together to develop lithium-ion manufacturing value chains in Africa. To industrialize, Africa must solve its major challenge with very low access to electricity. Think of what we have. Africa is endowed with 45% of the world's resources for renewable energy, including solar, hydro, wind, geothermal resources. The African Development Bank has invested over $7.5 billion in the past 5 years alone to expand access to electricity, which has provided electricity for 20 million people. Now, to further boost electricity availability, the African Development Bank is implementing a $20 billion desert-to-power initiative to develop 10,000 megawatts of solar power across 11 countries in the Sahelian zone of Africa, which will provide electricity for 250 million people. Now, this program, which has already garnered massive global support and has commenced in the G5 Sahel countries, will become the world's largest solar zone. To further boost Africa's manufacturing capacity for green energy, the African Development Bank will work with its partners to support the manufacturing of solar panels in Africa. Your Excellencies, the success of the African Continental Free Trade Area depends on closing Africa's infrastructure deficits. The African Development Bank Group has invested over $44 billion in infrastructure over the past 7 years, including roads, seaports, airports, digital communication infrastructure backbones, transport corridors, one-stop border posts, and regional power transmission lines, which are supporting regional power pools. Your Excellencies, as we develop special economic zones, it is time to reimagine industrial manufacturing in Africa. The future of manufacturing is digital. The global digital economy is estimated to be worth over $16 trillion. The use of Internet of Things, that is called IoT, will raise the productivity of labor in manufacturing, develop smart machines, manufacturing platforms and systems, connecting machines and people, and using machine learning and artificial intelligence to improve speed and efficiencies of complex manufacturing processes. The rise in the use of robots for manufacturing will pose a significant challenge for Africa's drive to attract investments. This will be especially the case in labor-intensive light manufacturing. As capital costs continue to fall faster than labor costs, developed countries are shifting towards reliance on industrial robots for manufacturing. Competition will become tougher in global value chains with robotics, as they could wipe out low labor cost advantage of Africa. The fourth industrial revolution, based on automation, robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data computing, 3D printing, and additive manufacturing, are rapidly transforming industrial manufacturing. Africa must therefore look beyond the industries of today into the industries of the future and develop a plan and capacity to compete in the smart industries that will become the main drivers of global economies. Africa must enhance its readiness to transition to digitized and smart manufacturing. It is therefore time for rapid investment in digital skills for manufacturing, retooling of workers, vocational training, digitization of industrial processes, investments in digital infrastructure, and environments. Your Excellencies, let us industrialize Africa. Let us diversify our economies. Let us develop more special economic zones. Let us prosper with the African Continental Free Trade Area. Let's close the door of poverty from the exports of raw materials. Let's open the highways for wealth with industrialization. Thank you very much